Let's get it cracking, man. I know that there's this one's probably gonna go all over the place. So I have no idea where it's gonna start, where it's gonna end, what direction we'll take it, but that's the beautiful part of it. We're just gonna see where this one rides, man. But I know that within that, at the same time, there is a lot that we do want to get into. Which is obviously there's a lot of things that kind of come up that we don't plan for. Um, I don't want to edge it any further, dude. I don't want to. I don't want to. I mentioned the other day, many times before. I don't want to suck up the oxygen. I want to. I want to. I want this to be the. It's a great day, man. Let's get it cracking. Welcome
Yeah,
aboard, man.
yeah. And talking about sucking up the oxygen, and I might be stealing a joke from one of the previous guests, but I think Dan Byrne has already soaked up all the oxygen, or whatever, what little was left at the Azteca from a couple nights ago. So, and yeah, yeah, you got some things you want to discuss. I know I do as well. Um, so. Tell me what's on your mind, man.
Well, there's always a lot on my mind, man. You know that. I mean, I would let's. There's no way to know where to ever start these things. It's just to be honest, I think sometimes people might not like if someone were to listen to this, they would probably be they'd be perplexed as to what the hell was going on sometimes. Especially I know when you and I tend to talk to kind of go all over the place. And I mean, I love all the different conversations, but definitely, I think as far as it pertains today, obviously there's a couple of things that we don't really want to beat around the bush about. And I think you know it. I know it. I'm sure other people, once we start talking about it, like, oh yeah, Um, but I think there's a lot, and it's impossible to get it out in one day. But without edging it any further, because we don't, we want to take our time, but we want the good edging. We don't want to torture ourselves. We will, so we want to find that happy medium, and in that honor, um, there's been a lot of talk about the World Cup, obviously. Uh, you know, the positives, the negatives, everything in between. Um, but in the last what is it, 48 hours, maybe a little bit more than that. Uh, there've been a lot of developments that have unfolded that have only added to the already long edged discussions. And it's very interesting how sometimes, patience doesn't always pay off, but it adds more context to it. And so I say all of that because I think, what happened with, whether it's the Flo Balogun situation that happened the other day, and then the aftermath of that, with obviously the match having taken place already. We'll talk about the result of that, and then just some of the discourse that goes on around certain things. I feel like um, with this particular recording, I'd like to really take the time to kind of talk about some of the things that maybe might not like drive ratings. If we probably wouldn't talk about this for one reason or another. But we don't, we want to like, I feel like we just want to do our own thing, and if people like it, that's great. And if they don't, I hope they don't kill either one of us because of it. But, I think just sometimes, as much as I might have an opinion or you might have an opinion, what I hope in this, if anyone hears this conversation, what we talk about, my main hope would be that there's the opinion of it, and then there's just what's actually fact. And it might overlap a little bit, but I wouldn't want the opinion to get lost in just the simple fact of what it is, if that makes sense. Um, but yeah, man, I wanna talk to you about this Flo Balogun thing and use that kind of as like a springboard to talk about all these other things. that go, way deeper than just that one particular topic. But I know that that's something that you and I have talked about a little bit, and it's one of those things where it's something that shouldn't be lost in the discourse of the conversation. It shouldn't be something that just kinda, like, falls out of the news cycle like so many things often do. It should be something that we don't forget about. Um, and regardless of the outcome of it, it's something that needs to be talked about, I feel like, because you can get into so much more than that. So I wanna get your thoughts on it, and then we'll just kinda go back and forth with it, but I just kinda wanna get your whole thoughts on not just the Balogun thing, but just, with FIFA at large, because I know that with you, like, you and I have known each other for such a long time, and I know that, what's the old thing we always talk about, that as much as things change, they stay the same. So you and I are completely different people, and than we were when we first met. And but one of the things that hasn't changed is I know you've always been passionate about talking about FIFA. And that's something that I can vouch for. But I know that your thoughts in many ways with that have evolved, but maybe haven't changed. Like it's in like a mind-boggling way. So I just want to set the stage for you, man, so we can kind of just go back and forth with it. But I just think we got to talk about these people. Not just. I feel like we just got to call a spade, and not beat around the bush. And I think without further ado, I think we just get it cracking, my brother. So
Yep, that's what we'll do. That's the only way we know how. So, yeah, the Flo Balogun situation. I think, yeah, you start from the origins of where it all began, which is that match against Bosnia, the awkward sort of landing that Flo Balogun jumps in the air for a ball, and on his way down, he has an awkward landing, and his right foot, I believe, um, kind of unintentionally catches the foot of a Bosnian player to the extent that it kind of his foot is planted on top of the Bosnian player's ankle, in a way that it twists, and it's a very uncomfortable replay when you watch it, because when you see it, you realize, yeah, it's a pretty we've seen gruesome injuries in every sport over the years. This, I don't know, not to compare injuries, this wasn't the most gruesome, not by a long shot, but it definitely was a a very dangerous, uh, you know, bang bang sort of play. Uh, with the whether there was intent or not, it's very clear there wasn't. Um, Whether or not that's relevant to whether that you know that it, to whether that warrants a red card, whether it's relevant as far as should intent matter or not. I mean, that's a debate that we can all have. I think it's a healthy debate, but in this situation there was clearly no intent. I mean, his eyes were not even looking at, obviously, the foot of the Bosnian player. It wasn't some, it wasn't some like bounty gate thing. It was just a bang bang play. And it was unfortunate. He was really unlucky to catch the foot of the Bosnian, to catch the ankle of the Bosnian player, but he did. And it ultimately, when I saw it live, when I saw it live, I didn't really wasn't able to digest it. But then, of course, they show a replay, and they show the replay in real time. And then when they show the replay, it's like, oh wow, I kind of didn't even really notice that happened. I mean, I saw that they kind of, their bodies collided a little bit, but you kind of see the full picture of the injury, and obviously through the replay. and then they show the slow motion version, and then when they put in slow motion, it obviously looks even worse than it did in real time. Um, so as this is all unfolding, I'm watching the game with my brother, with Big Nate, and in the moment I saw it as I'm watching these replays, real time, slow motion, all of that. When while they're doing the VAR review, I'm thinking to myself, He's in trouble." The commentators are talking about, well, they're having they're talking about whether there was intent or not, and clearly he didn't mean it, and what is he supposed to do in that situation? That's all fine and dandy, but I couldn't, the nature of the landing and the nature of how the Bosnian player's ankle, um, you know, was situated in that moment was, yeah, this is something that's going to warrant at the very least a yellow card and potentially a red card. And that's ultimately what they went to review for. And like I said, in the moment as I'm watching, it's really tough. Refereeing is a really hard thing to do. I'm not going to act like I have a clear, distinct, black and white opinion on so many of these tight sort of calls that can go either way. So, and this is one of those where maybe I'm beating around the bush a little bit or kind of taking the easy way out. But you can make a case for it being a red. You can make a case for for not being a red. But in the moment, I was leaning towards that's probably a red. I was more worried than I was. I mean, especially when they go to VAR. There's you reckon you almost kind of concede. You almost surrender yourself to the reality that this is probably going to be um, you know, given as a red. And I honestly, if you put a gun in my head, that's where I would lean to. And I think I'm in the minority on that, in that particular debate. From what I've seen and heard from other people who I've talked to, and also just, discourse from online, it seems like more people have felt that it was a red would be un, a bit harsh, but at the end of the day, whether what I think and what those people think, and it's kind of irrelevant because at the end of the day, the call was made that it was a red. And to be honest with you, I've seen a good chunk. We any of us who watch football, any of us who watch any sport, we've all seen calls that go our way, that we have all seen calls that go against us. We all have favorite teams that we root for. I'm sure all of us here in the Unfiltered Report could write down a list of instances and where each of our NFL or NBA, MLB, NHL, soccer teams have been screwed over by some dodgy referee decisions, and we can all make a list as and as for instances where the opposite happened, where we all kind of got lucky, and we got the benefit of a bad call. So I like to think that over the course of time, these things kind of, you know maybe it's an idealistic way of looking at it, but I like to think that over time these things kind of even out. But sometimes but anyways, yeah, I think even as someone who's obviously rooting for the U.S. in that game, yeah, I wasn't too fussed about the decision. I made peace with it because, like I said, I thought it was probably a red card, and that's fine. If people feel differently, I'm okay with that. We all have our sort of, and it's one of those. It's like it's subjective. It's not like a black and white. I mean, most referee decisions are pretty subjective. Very few are actually black and white. So, always open to hearing other opinions on this. But yeah, at the end of the day, it was a red card, and that was that. I think I made peace with it. I think we just the game goes on, and ultimately the U.S. ended up winning the game comfortably, despite going down to 10 men, and that was that. Um, I have to say that Flo Balogun, in the aftermath of the being given the red card, whether it be his reaction on the pitch or his response after the match, and everything he said in the aftermath, I thought he handled himself with aplomb. I thought he handled himself very well, and considering this, you could argue, the short end of the stick that he got. And I mean, again, whether we think it's a red or not, it's a tough situation for him to be in. I mean, it's a World Cup, and he's been he's been one of the U.S.'s best players this tournament. He's been a revelation to me, to be honest. He's exceeded my expectations, and so this it's a sucker punch. It sucks, and especially because it wasn't as if he had any malicious intent, and it's just the nature of the game, and it is what it is. But I think the way he handled it in the aftermath was, as good as you could do in a tough situation. He was professional about it, and you move on. I think after the game, you kind of just you immediately, as if you're the U.S., you kind of just, yeah, you're happy with the win, and then you go into the next game, planning for, obviously, being without Balogun because of the red card. That's how football works. You get a red card, and the next game you are suspended. That's how it usually works. However, that seemingly has become a little bit. Those lines have become a bit more blurred as of late, and we'll get to that. Um, but yeah, so yeah, the U.S. probably goes, thinking, okay, well, we'll probably slot in Ricardo Pepi, or maybe we'll move Christian Pulisic as a false nine, and we'll, maybe slot Gio Reyna somewhere in the midfield, and we'll figure it out from there. And I think, up to that point in the tournament, Mauricio Pochettino, who's someone I rate very highly, as a Spurs fan, for everything he had done, with Tottenham, for Tottenham, um, deserves the benefit of the doubt. I trusted that he was gonna, whatever the game plan, the tactical adjustments that were needed to be made, as a result of the red card. Obviously it's a miss, it's a loss, not having Balogun. Your number nine, your informed number nine, but yeah, you move on. Like, it's not that deep. It's just how it is. It is what it is. Anyways, fast forward, to, I don't know, 48 hours ago or so, somewhere thereabouts. Um, there was a report that comes out that, uh, Flo Balogun's red card was, uh, or his ban rather, was going to be suspended. Um, from what I recall, the red card was not rescinded or, reversed or anything. The red card still stood. So if you look back at the match facts from the U.S. Bosnia game, he still received the red card. But as far as the one match suspension as a result of the red card, that was completely, reversed, or not reversed, suspended, whatever that means. I mean, I don't know if that means he's
He
going
serves it
to
at a later date, essentially. Like,
a
they
later date.
suspend.
Well, you're right. I understand what suspended means. What I don't understand is, the
Good.
arbitrary. Right? Like, does that mean? Well, at the, we'll get it. I mean, not a lot of these definitions are very fluid. It seems like. I mean, it's kind of rhetorical question, but, you know, what suspended? I mean, yes, suspended implies he's going to serve his ban at some point at a later date. The question more is more of when, and I think the more pertinent, relevant part of that question, or rather answer to that question, is that suspension will not be served during this World Cup. That was made very clear, almost immediately. He was going to be available for the game against Belgium, and that was the story. That was the news, and I think we were all shocked. And immediately you think, well, what transpired behind the scenes? What, you know, and it comes out that, FIFA, received pressure, from, uh, you know the the president of the United States, and, um, we all know where the pressure came from. We all know where the pressure came from. They received. It came out that FIFA received, or Gianni Infantino had received a phone call from the president, and, of the United States, and, um, president, imploring, or, suggesting that the red card decision should be reversed. because in that their opinion, the red card was, yeah, undeserved and not the right call. Um, and yeah, so over the course of, I think they said it was, yeah, three phone calls between the two of them. Ultimately, one thing leads to another, and yeah, so the yeah, that's that's what apparently transpired prior to the suspension or the ban being suspended. And um, you know it also, in response, FIFA publishes a statement about, something, something independent ethics committee. There was no uh, pressure or influence from any outside actors or politicians or what have you, kind of, putting out a statement to save face, like most companies or brands do after a firestorm like this happens, and you need to respond quickly. And FIFA is we've come to learn that FIFA is uh, very mindful about certain things, certain optics, and very ignorant and negligent and kind of oblivious to other things. And of course, in this situation, they came out and tried to sort of clear the air, or at least attempt to. And yeah, I mean, like, if it quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. It's one of those situations where it's been reported there was a few phone calls. We know that the president of FIFA has a very warm and cordial, to say the least, very cozy relationship with uh, the president of the United States. And to you know it wouldn't be with let's just call, as you so eloquently put it, I think we can call a spade a spade. Just because we are saying that is a very good chance that um there I think it's pretty clear what's happened here. You know and this is not even like a stance that I'm taking on, as far in terms of the ever from any political side or anything. This is simply FIFA allowing a political actor to influence its decision making and to affect the integrity of the game, um, and in a way that I think is reprehensible. It's inexcusable, and it goes everything against what what sport is supposed to be about. And I don't like jumping to conclusions. I think that's dangerous. I think um, you can. I think a lot of times these things require patience, like you said, and kind of let. I think we in the era that we live in, it is so easy to get carried away and to read a headline and to just connect all these dots. It's I guess it's human nature nowadays. I mean, we're all guilty of it. Each and every one of us are. No one's immune to the to the just the evolution of technology and the information society we live in, where you know um, we we have the whole world at our fingertips. So you know I try to be measured in how I assess this situation. But the reality is, and if this was an isolated event, I would give FIFA the benefit of the doubt, or I'd be more likely to. But because of FIFA's track record, um, because of the president of FIFA's track record, and the litany of things that he has said and actions he has taken over the course of the past couple weeks, the past 6 months, the past several years during his administration, following you know, Sepp Blatter in his role. I you know I think it's one of those things where the FIFA does not deserve the benefit of the doubt here. And I'll be the first to say if it comes out that, look, if they do, if they if there's like some investigation, a 30 for 30, E60, whatever, and it comes out that they are able to prove that it was, the FIFA's decision was completely uh, immune from any external pressure from any politician or from any outside actors. Well, I think you and I will both gladly come on here and correct ourselves and uh, state the record for what it is. But FIFA does not deserve the benefit of the doubt, and look, you don't have to look any further. I mean, we can use so many examples. We have a lot of different receipts, but as far as this tournament goes, we can look no further than the special treatment. This situation with Flo Balogun. Obviously, this is we're talking about the U.S., a host nation, so leave aside the relationship between the president of the United States and the president of FIFA and how cozy and uncomfortable and borderline disturbing that might be. The fact of the matter is that this is, the United States is probably going to get special treatment regardless. Um, because of the sole fact that they are a host nation. And I say that not recklessly, but I say that with the track record of how Cristiano Ronaldo has had his 2 match suspension lifted. He had received a red card in Portugal's, I think, their last qualifier against the Republic of Ireland back in November. Um, and I don't know at what point during the springtime or the past couple months when exactly it came out, but it came out eventually that his 2 game ban as a result of that red card was going to be suspended. What As far as an explanation or what was the justification for that, I have no idea because FIFA has never addressed it. As to my knowledge, it's just an arbitrary sort of decision, I suppose. And, it happened. And, maybe it was a story for a little bit, for a little while when, back in March or April or whenever it came out that this was going to be, that this was announced. I'm sure several publications posted about it, whether it be The Athletic, The Guardian, ESPN. Maybe there was an article here or there about it. Maybe I'm sure people report about it, but um, didn't seem as though it caught very a lot of wind. Maybe slipped under the radar a little bit. Um, and fast forward to June, whatever the day was that Portugal opened their World Cup. And Cristiano Ronaldo was on the pitch. He's on the pitch for match day 1. He's on the pitch for match day 2, despite the fact that he should not have been playing in those 2 games as a result of the red card. Again, the explanation is non-existent from FIFA, and uh, you know, as fans of the game, you and me, Ryan, and everyone who's on this platform, and so many billions of people across the world, we at the end of the day, we just when all boils down to is we're all fans at the end of the day, and we just want to enjoy some football because the World Cup is it's a beautiful thing. It's the biggest event in the world. It's the biggest sporting event. I said it the other day with Shivam and Justin. Something that I will always love about. I mean, the World Cup is. I'm no different. It holds a special place in all of our hearts. It means so much to all of us. I feel a similar way about the Olympics, although I'm not as passionate about the Olympics as I am, obviously the World Cup. What I appreciate about the World Cup and the Olympics is that and I said it again a couple days ago with the boys, but I'll reiterate, it's one of the few times where we live in a big world, man. It's a big world, a lot of it's there's a lot of beauty in the world, there's a lot of ugly in the world, but for those 30 days, for that month, or 3 weeks that the Olympics are on, for that month that the World Cup is on, the world feels just a little bit smaller, and it feels, it feels like one community that we and united by sport, and one of the few institutions left in society that I think still has the power to unite and bring people together in a way that I think not many things can these days. You know, Not to paint too much of a dark picture on things, but like I said, the World Cup is beautiful. Every World Cup has plenty of beauty to it, but also every World Cup inevitably also has a lot of darkness. There's a dark side to every World Cup as well. And you know, with regards to this World Cup, whether it's this World Cup or the 2022 World Cup in Qatar or the 2018 World Cup in Russia or the 2014 World Cup in Brazil, even the 2010 World Cup in South Africa, or the 2006 World Cup in Germany. Each of these World Cups that I just mentioned have had an insurmountable amount of of controversy, questionable sort of uh, decision making by the powers that be. From as little something as little as uh, the implementation of hydration breaks, something as trivial as that, to something as serious as the widespread and overwhelmingly horrific and diabolical treatment of migrant workers in labor camps in the in the in Qatar in preparation for the 2022 World Cup. Um, you know, and in 2018, awarding a World Cup to a nation with a very a questionable at best um, record of human rights, and um, you know just a questionable stance on the world stage, where 4 years prior to the hosting of that World Cup, invaded a portion of a sovereign nation. You can go back to 2014, Brazil hosting um, a World Cup that was awarded to a people who are as passionate as they are about football, were put in a position where they were boycotting a World Cup. I mean, in their own country, not because of distaste for football. I mean, there's no nation, no people in the world, arguably more. Uh, we owe more of a gratitude to than Brazil when it comes to the sport of football. There is no football without Brazil, and there's Brazilians on the streets marching and protesting the World Cup coming to their home nation, um, and as a result of the widespread corruption and the misallocation of funds and resources, towards these stadiums and their projects with those stadiums, and while the government neglects the domestic population and the poverty that is widespread in many of the urban areas across the nation, across Brazil. And then 2006 and 2010, two World Cups that we've spoken very fondly of, especially 2010 as well as 2014. For all the magical memories that they provided, and I still stand by that. Like, all of those memories are legitimate, and no one can ever take those away from you. No one can ever take them away from me. you know that's the beautiful side of those World Cups. But then there's also the dark side, which is, with those two World Cups in particular, '06 and 2010, those World Cups were awarded in a very at a shady manner, let's just say. With And there's been a lot of investigation that had been done about those World Cups and the corruption in terms of how those tournaments were awarded. um, and again, I think, so if you go from 2006 to now, there's a litany of controversies and things that have happened. The dark sides of each of those World Cups have, yeah, they've been reported on, but because of the magic of the beautiful game, and because of the joy that it brings, and because at the end of the day, sometimes as fans, we just want to we just want to we don't want to we just want to enjoy football. We just want to enjoy sport. We want to enjoy life, like so even though we are aware of a lot of these in many cases atrocities, especially with regards to the 2022 World Cup, like at the end of the day, you know we watch the games, and we feel moved by them because of that. That's our relationship with football, and that's the world's relationship with football. And none of those feelings and emotions should ever be stripped from us. They should never be taken away, and we should never feel ashamed or guilty to feel those things. But the unfortunate reality is FIFA has put the fans and the people around the sport who make up the sport, in situations where uh, it you know I look back to it's the most recent World Cup, so I'm going to keep going back to it. But 2022 in Qatar, and it's the World Cup that I personally have done the most uh, research on, and even reporting when back when I was in high school and in college. I've written a stupid amount of papers and reports on FIFA, and that World Cup in particular, and the preparation leading up to it. But you know, the legacy of that World Cup is always going to be, like any World Cup. It's always going to be it's gonna a little bit conflicting, because the games on the pitch were, I mean, let's just fast forward all the way to the final. The display that those two teams put out on the Lusail Stadium, France and Argentina, the individual performances by two of the greatest players in the world, arguably the greatest player of all time, and potentially what someone who could very well be the greatest player of all time as well. I will never forget that match. None of us will ever forget it. Um, the individual brilliance by Kylian Mbappe, essentially just putting the entire nation of France on his back, and then of course, the extra time, and just the back and forth nature of the game, and then the penalty kicks, and then Messi, having his moment, but more importantly, Argentina having their moment. Such a historic football nation getting their third star in a game where France easily could have gotten their own third star. And I mean, I, as a neutral watching that game, with no stake, with no horse in the race, um, I was shaking, dude. Like, I had goose. I mean, it was unbelievable. And I think that game was unlike anything I've ever seen ever. So on the one hand, those are memories and moments and emotions that will never that will always be associated with that World Cup, with that stadium where that tournament was held, that very stadium, you know, where that final was happened. Um, there was also tragedy. And I don't have the exact figure on that stadium alone, or I don't have any figures with me at the moment, but you know to think how much, whether, I mean, one death is too much, and the amount of people that died, whether building the stadium or you know working in the labor camps, and under those harsh conditions where, I mean, they were being housed these people were being housed in these tiniest of spaces where you could hardly move. I mean, because it was so tiny. Like, you had a living room, a bathroom, if that, all in one little, you know square, you know unit. And it in the unforgiving heat, year round. Qatar is close to the equator. None of us need to be geniuses to realize what that means. whether it's summer or winter, it doesn't really make much of a difference because it's because it's at the equator and it's hot. It's gonna be hot year round. And so the conditions just appalling, and ultimately which led to um, many people dying, when and FIFA escaped much, without having to face much accountability. As usual, Amnesty International did plenty of work, um, to report on, on the ground, and but and plenty of other journalists and on the boots had their boots on the ground, and did reporting, but on it, which is great. The transparency is what we need, but unfortunately, it came out to really to nothing, and FIFA escaped much accountability. And you know what? Their greatest gift is the fact that there are, as for all the controversies leading up to the tournament itself, the fact that there are games that are ultimately played. That is exactly what that it satisfies FIFA's playbook, because once the ref blows the whistle and the games are played on the pitch, not to say that we all forget about, these things. And so honestly, some of us, like I said, we all live busy lives, and it's I if no one has done any research on this, I wouldn't even fault them for it, because why? It's not their obligation. It is the obligation, the responsibility lies in the powers that be, the people with power and influence, not, you know so this isn't some sort of virtue signaling spiel or anything that you and I are on about, like the way, it's not the response. FIFA has let people down time and time again, and I think back, that World Cup is always, all these every World Cup is it's got a beautiful side and it's got a dark side to it. And for all the beauty that happened in that World Cup final and that entire World Cup, just in general, you know, um, I hope that, you know, unfortunately, we are put in a position where we have to almost, we have to remind ourselves of the context of of how that World Cup came to be, to no fault of our own, to no fault of anyone listening to this, to no fault of you, Ryan, to no fault of us. It's again, it's just, time and time again, leadership failing, on multiple levels. But yeah, so anyways, yeah, fast forward back to 2026. This World Cup has had its own uh sort of controversies, and I think there's several that you can speak way better about than I can. And I know that you've already, sort of uh, kind of introduced, I guess, given like a preface of what you want to talk about, but I'm sure there's plenty more you want to, and you'll always have the floor. We'll always give you the floor to do so, Ryan. But you know, as far as, yeah, the things that, again, as trivial as something as hydration breaks. And I mean, after everything, after talking about the consequences and of the previous World Cups, I mean, hydration break. I mean, it almost feels a little trivial to transition into that now, because it I mean, it's so ridiculous that it's not that consequential in the grand scheme of things. But little things like that, why are there hydration breaks? Well, player safety. I mean, let's talk about hydration breaks. The word is that we have hydration breaks because of player safety, right? Um, and player wellness, especially with all these congested fixtures and calendars now, with all these different competitions, um, and the FIFA is just looking out for the players. Of course, that's why we're instituting hydration breaks. And by the way, it's really hot in the United States in the summer. I don't know if you knew that, Ryan. Just like it was really hot in Qatar in the winter, and pretty warm in Russia in the summer, and you know hey, climate change is a real thing. But let's not act like you know the U.S. or the northern hemisphere being hot in the summer is anything that is new. So I think, again, to keep up with the theme which you started with, let's call a spade a spade. We know what these hydration breaks are all about. It ain't about player wellness. It's about making money. It's about advertisements. It's about commercialization of the game. It's about maximizing profit, and under the guise of player wellness. And I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I'm not. I will never make the argument that playing in Miami in the middle of July or June, when it's 95 degrees and it's 60% humidity and you feel like you can't even breathe and your shirt is soaking wet, not from rain, but just from being outside for 30 seconds. I mean, I don't I've been in Florida in the summer. It is not pleasant. And especially in those sort of conditions, and I mean, let alone playing a football match, 90 minutes plus. Hey, I'm all for hydration breaks in those situations. It's not that I'm a blank. That's we talked about this, Ryan. We're not again. We're not like, we don't have a blanket anti hydration break stance or anything. We understand that, yeah, hydration breaks are definitely necessary in those conditions. And I hope, I would want FIFA to implement hydration breaks in those instances, but there is no reason that you can justify having, it's one thing to have a hydration break in Miami when it's 95 degrees and it's 60% humidity. It's another thing to have a hydration break at 9:30 at night in Seattle, Washington, when it's 65 degrees and, you know, and clear. I mean, it makes, it makes no sense. Other than if you were to consider, well, actually, it does make sense, because at the end of the day, it's to, again, for these networks, and for to air commercials and to maximize profit, to make more money. Because at the end of the day, that's what makes the world go round. That's the bottom line for almost everything. Uh, you know, and hey, you know what? None of us can ever get enough money, right? So it's understandable in that regard, I guess. But yeah, it's frustrating, man. I sent you a video earlier, Ryan, and I mean, I think the individual who was talking about the hydration breaks, who's working for the host broadcasting network for the United States, in the English language rights, Fox. That individual said that, hey, the world's changing, man. Hydration breaks. I know a lot of fans may not care for it, but that's just how the world's going these days, man. Like, it kind of get used to it. Those 30-second breaks during NFL games, where Jim Nance sends you uh, to a split screen commercial break so that Flo from Progressive can sell you insurance. That's, we might not like it, but hey, that's just the direction that the world's going. So we just have to kind of like suck it up. And also, climate change is, you know I mean, can you believe he had the audacity to use climate change as an excuse as to, I mean, look, I just, it's infuriating. So, FIFA again. So, Ronaldo, Flo Balogun, hydration breaks. Iran. Ryan, I'll give you the floor on Iran in a bit, if you so please. I know it's not an easy thing to discuss. Um, I mean, none of these things are easy to discuss, but that's why we're having these. That's why we're here. Because it's a responsibility that, we love more than anything. We love football. We love soccer. We love sport. And as lovers of the sport, like, we need to, you know, not everybody needs to do this, but you and me, we feel like these things need to be amplified more, and they just aren't, you know because at the end of the day, the world is driven by the almighty dollar. And also, if you're powerful, or if you're important, or perceived as important, or you will get beneficial treatment. And I will use that to kind of go back to where we all started with the Flo Balogun situation. um you know You can you there is no way you can convince me that if this were say Uzbekistan, if this happened to an Uzbek player, or South African player, or you know New Zealand player, like this, what are we like? Let's like let's just call a spade a spade. Um, we know where the pressure came from. No one else has to say it. No, if no one else wants to say it, that's fine. I'll say it. So Ryan, you and I will say it, so no one else has to. But we know where it came from. We know there was a phone call, at least one phone call, and it puts us in a situation where you know, I, I know there's a lot of U.S. fans who feel almost embarrassed, and um, it's not their fault. They shouldn't be embarrassed because of anything they did themselves, but rather, you know, again, the actions of powerful individuals who don't represent a lot of us, but unfortunately have more, because of their position, they get to dictate a lot of these things. And um it's, as someone that, I watched the game last night. I watched the US Belgium game last night, and I would be lying to you if I told you I felt a lot more apathy towards the game than I otherwise would have, because as much as I want the US, I wanted the US to win. I want the US to win every World Cup match we play, and I understand not everyone feels that way, and that's completely fine. But I understand there are plenty of reasons to want to root against the US, and this Flo Balogun situation notwithstanding, I mean, that just makes it easier. I get it. Like, there's a lot of reasons, legitimate reasons, why people would want, not even rooting against the US, but just would have no, desires to root for the US. And I could never, I will never, I have no issue with that sort of position. But I'm also my own person, and I made the choice that I want the US to win, because it's not for any political agendas, or not because of some, not because we don't win enough in other sports, because we obviously, we you said it really well in our conversation off the record yesterday. Like, football, you know basketball, baseball, hockey. Now, obviously, in each of those sports, I mean, hockey, Canada's a great hockey. They've got a great hockey culture, a winning culture. Baseball, Japan, the Dominican Republic, Venezuela, Puerto Rico, Mexico, South Korea, Taiwan. Like, these are. It's not like we're the only nation in the world that plays these sports, and that we're the. I mean, heck, the best baseball player on the planet is not American. He's Japanese. And it's oftentimes that the best player on the planet, baseball player on the planet, is not American. It's there's been Dominican, Japanese, Puerto Rican. So, not to say that we dominate in all those sports and we have a monopoly on those sports, but we do uh, sort of have, I guess, we enjoy success in those sports where other nations really, not many other nations can really compete. So, and with respect to soccer, it's like it's the one sport where we are a bit behind the eight ball, I guess. Kind of like the underdog, if as so much as the U.S. can possibly be an underdog in any context, we kind of are in soccer. So, and as someone who, it's as simple as I live, I'm born and raised here. I love soccer. There's nothing other than, I just want the sport to grow here. I want the sport to grow here. I want, you know, um, I don't, whether whoever's playing on the pitch, whoever's wearing the kits, it could have been anybody playing on that pitch last night. I still would want to root for the U.S. to win, because I love the sport and I want the sport to grow here. And because this sport has come a long way in this country just in the past 30 years. And there's plenty of people who've been alive, longer than that, to attest to the growth of the sport in this country. And I want to see it to continue to grow. Um, all parts of the country, from the West Coast, the East Coast, Middle America, everywhere. I mean, Kansas City is one of the biggest hotspots, soccer hotspots in the entire country, and I think that's really freaking cool, man. Seattle is another one. And obviously, LA and Miami increasingly in recent years as well. And I want to see that to continue to grow. So if nothing else, that's why I root for the US. And I wanted the US to win yesterday, but I would be lying to you if I said, like I said, the same sort of, 12 years ago when we played Belgium in the round of 16, I had a lot there was if it was different because, you know, the feeling and the drive and the will I had to want to the will I was placing on the team to win in 2014 was far greater than it was last night. And maybe there's multiple reasons for that, but honestly, a big reason is the whole Balogun situation and the nature of how it transpired. And it's like it just even if we had won that game last night, dude, it would have felt dirty, man. There's nothing that and again, it sounds very virtue signally, but like I'm just stating there's times maybe I'm too patriotic, so I'm not I'm not gonna be one to virtue signal just for the sake of it. But like last night, we lost, and it's like, yeah, you know what? Maybe maybe that's poetic justice. Maybe that's and it pains me because the players on that pitch, again, none of us are in are have have are obligated to feel anything for those guys. By all accounts, like a lot of those players have been given so much more than any other previous American soccer generation has ever been given. So I'm not gonna, shed it. I'm not saying anyone should be shedding a tear for any of those guys. Um, but I feel I do feel a bit of I feel an ounce of you know they've been hard done by, man. They didn't ask for this. At least at least as of now, there's been nothing to indicate that they asked. The players on the pitch. And I don't know, and I don't want to. It's impossible to quantify, but how much it affected them on the pitch last night. Maybe it didn't at all. I'm entirely open to that possibility. By the way, maybe it had zero impact. Maybe it had 100% impact. I don't know. Maybe it's somewhere in the middle, but regardless, it was it's I those guys, they make their millions, they'll be fine, but like it speaks to this to just it sucks. It just sucks. And for so many of us US fans, like there's an air of like sort of we feel almost embarrassed, like it's I not embarrassed to be not embarrassed, of course, because anything we've done ourselves, but just the fact that it paints us in such a there's I mean, if the roles were reversed, I'd be livid, man. Like, and so I we need to be consistent. And when it happen, like it's not whether it happens to a Belgian player, whether it works to Belgium's benefit or the US's benefit, we need to call it for what it is. And what happened was not right. And I like I said, I feel for Flo Balogun because he did nothing. Again, he handled the aftermath of the red card pretty professionally. And um I wonder how much of that that weight was he was carrying on his shoulders last night. But more importantly, forget players aside, like it just sucks for the fans, for those of us in this country who are football fans who want the sport to grow. It just feels like a slap in the face, and it's like an opportunity that was blown into epic proportions, especially the first few matches, and how you can talk about the opponents and whether they were of great quality. I like to think that Paraguay, Australia, and Turkey are better than the average casual fan might have you lead you to believe. Um, because we are so infatuated with stars, and that's great. I love the stars. I love them. I think stars are great. I think they are what makes so many great moments and memories that we will live attached to. That'll be attached to us for the rest of our lives. But uh, to dismiss Australia and Paraguay and Bosnia and Turkey as cannon fodder and as fillers for this tournament, um, you know, it would be. disingenuous. They earned their right to be here, and the U.S. for the U.S. to win those games, you know, um, it's not like they've conquered, Rome or anything. It's not like they've beaten. I'm never going to try to convince you that, we played, 2010 Spain or this version of France, because we haven't. Those teams are simply not, they are not at that level. But winning in the World Cup, you don't take that for granted. And winning those four games in the way that the US did, there was such positive momentum and positive feeling, and all of it just goes to waste, and over the acts of few individuals who are interested in nothing but progressing, advancing their own self-interest, their own selfish self-interest. um, and it starts and ends with the president of FIFA, who, he loves to show face around all these stadiums. He loves to advertise him, almost self-advertise himself at every single game. He likes to make a point that he can go to as many games as he can, because clearly there's been a directive by the World Feed, who obviously is controlled by FIFA, to show him as many times as they can. Um, sitting in that press box, sitting in that suite rather, wearing his fancy schmancy suit to give this facade that he is, someone who loves the game, and football unites the world, and he is one of us, and he represents the best interests of the sport and of everyone who loves the sport. Um, but but in reality, it to me, I see nothing other than a guy who thinks he's king. He's treat he the just he does he might be his title, his role as president, that's his title officially, but he behaves a lot more like a king, like a supreme leader, like a crown prince, like some dictatorial leader who who makes decisions on his own accord unilaterally. And it's and the cozying up to political leaders, whether it be in this tournament or previous tournaments. um you know um that football needs to be independent of that stuff, and I understand that's pie in the sky stuff to say that out loud, especially in this era where so many of the lines between all these different institutions have become so blurred that it's resulted in so many of us losing faith in these very institutions that we used to be hold so dearly. And um these things don't self-sustain themselves, and whether we're talking about something as trivial as football or something even deeper than that, they require, they you know these things aren't just inherently going to be fair, um and have integrity, and be serve the best interests of us, the people. So, you know in many ways, I know you and I kind of feel powerless, Ryan, but like, if there's anything we can do, and even if it's just talking about this and me rambling for the God knows how long, the past however long I've been talking, um, I hope that it can make even a 0.01% of a difference, and it's worth it, because it's a slap in the face, to whether you're a Belgian person, whether you're Belgian player, a Belgian fan, whether you're, um, a Persian, whether you're someone from Iran, who lives there or has lives, anywhere else in the world, who just wants to watch the team that represents them, not the government, but them, to do well, to provide some semblance of hope, and just distract provide a source of distraction, just even for 90 minutes. We can't even have that, because as we know now, the FIFA president was very eager to seemingly rid Iran from this tournament, and the Homeland Security Secretary of these United States even went as so far as to say that, thank God, essentially saying thank God that Iran is out. And look, I when this tournament, when the World Cup was in Russia and Qatar, and we were a lot of us were quick to criticize every little thing that those leaders and those the people in high positions in those countries, you know, the things that they would do or say. We were very quick to criticize them. A lot of us were anything to discredit, or delegitimize, um, their standing as far as the World Cup goes. We need to be consistent. We need to do the same here. Um, to say that about a nation who's earned their right to participate in this tournament, from a government elected or a government official at that, is despicable. And sadly, however, it's not surprising. And as it's yeah, to quote that individual who works for Fox, that's just seemingly how the world is going, and we just kind of have to live with it, and there's nothing we can do about it. That's how the FIFA president operates. He operates unilaterally, and basically FIFA as a whole behaving like a mafia, an organization where, saying right to everybody's face, we're gonna do this, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. There's nothing you can do to stop us. Um, and this World Cup, and I've been going on and on, so I'll try I'll try to close my thoughts as coherently as possible. But this World Cup, I don't want to distract, and I know neither of us wants to distract from the beauty that's happened on the pitch. We just, as long as this recording's been on, like, we can spend this much time talking about Cabo Verde, DR Congo, and Australia, Norway, um, France and their brilliance. We can talk about the disappointments of Brazil and Germany, and the Dutch. We can talk about how the Moroccans yet again are seemingly making another deep run in the tournament when, you know maybe not a lot of people coined them to go all the way. The brilliance that Japan displayed in their matches in this tournament, the the games that all of the games that were in Mexico, and any game that Mexico played in Mexico, as a Mexican, like myself, I haven't felt closer to the Mexican national team than this is the closest I felt to the Mexican national team since 2014. And although it ended in a pretty uh heartbreaking way against England a couple nights ago, there's a part of me that I'm so proud of where I come from, and the people and my people, and to make, for all the faults, for all the flaws of this tournament, what's happened and what's transpired at the Azteca during this tournament, which, just the passion of this on the streets from Mexican supporters and all supporters, the Dutch, the Egyptians, you know, the Swiss, the Argentinians, all these, I mean, that's what the World Cup should be about at the end of the day. And I'm glad that we can, and I hope we can continue to, yeah, we'll continue to embrace the good parts, and to not get lost in the sauce, and you know continue to enjoy those magical moments. I mean, the moment of the tournament so far might have just been that second goal that Cabo Verde scored against Argentina. I still That goal went in like slow motion, man. I mean, that when that goal went in, I think I celebrated that goal more than I celebrated any other Mexico or Germany goal this entire tournament, man. I mean, that was unbelievable. That's what the World Cup's all about. So let's make the World Cup about that. Maybe just message to the people at FIFA, and to particularly not even the people at FIFA, because you know what, I'm sure there's plenty of people who work in FIFA who it's a job. They and hey, it's nothing that let's pinpoint our frustrations at the people who deserve it, who warrant it, um, and hold them accountable. Um, because as much as they want to, you know, um, destroy the integrity of the game and blur the lines between what's morally right, what's morally wrong. You know, we the people who love this game, it's always going to be ours. It's never going to be FIFA's. It's going to be ours. And so, um, as a kind of a very bittersweet U.S. American fan, like uh, it sucks that we lost. And the whole situation just sucks. Period. I really wish that Flo never got a red card, so this situation could have been avoided. But even in spite of the red card, it should have never happened like this because um, it just does if not nothing else, number one, it's a stain on the game and the integrity and honesty of sport, and it's also a huge missed opportunity for this nation which we call home. Sport. The game is going to make leaps and grow leaps and bounds because of this tournament, regardless of whether we had won or lost against Belgium. But you know, uh, I just if we had missed out on any extra growth because of the actions of a few individuals, it's something that it can never be forgotten. And I really hope that you know whether it's the Ronaldo, playing in the two matches which he should have never played, whether it's Messi and getting, the play against Algeria where he almost at the very least should have gotten a yellow card and should have had a VAR review, just escaped without any accountability. Hey, you know what? The president of the United States said it best. Um, you don't want to see your best. You don't want to see the best players not playing on the field. So you got to do whatever it takes to keep them on the field, whether that be Cristiano Ronaldo, Lionel Messi, Flo Balogun, um, and even if it means even if that comes at the cost of un questioning the of sacrificing the integrity of the game and blurring the lines between what's right and what's wrong, and yeah. So I'll let you jump in here, and I know you've got plenty of things to say about this as well, so hopefully you can hijack this back from me the way I hijacked it from you.
Oh, this is great, man. This is perfect. So many directions. I mean, dude, it was all. I couldn't have said any of that better than what you just did. But I can only add on top of it, and you know, uh, there are a couple of different things I'll just highlight and add on top of what you said. And so for example, before I get to that though, I will say, one of the things that I know you and I both have a shared love for is history. Um, you know, and we talk about a lot of times like history always repeats itself. If it's not exactly like you can find the pattern, you can find from patterns of the past what will happen in the present and in the future, and you can learn from it as best you can. And with FIFA, you mentioned that even before Yanni Infantino, FIFA's always uh been a corrupt organization in many ways. You mentioned Ronaldo and Flo Balogun. Even you go back to 1962 with this Brazilian dude Garrincha. He gets a red card in the semifinal, a couple of phone calls, and some under the table bribes, and he ends up playing in the final. Brazil win the final. They win the 1962 World Cup. Um, but there are a lot of things you said. You mentioned this Fox Sports guy. You sent that to me earlier. You'd actually mentioned it. Maybe was it like a week or two ago that you mentioned it to me. I believe it came out, I think June 23rd. You sent it to me today, but we
Yeah,
talked about it maybe like 2 weeks ago. And it's a 40-minute clip. It's Colin Coward talking with this. I don't remember the guy's name, but I guess they call him Mr. Insight. The insights guy. He gives them all the rating spiel. And, I don't know if you remember, I don't even know, the people that hear this, if they even listen to it, the one that we talked about with that, the FCC guy, Newt Minow, and the fact, they're talking about ratings.
Mhm.
I only got to watch half of it, and I look forward to watching the other half. I typically don't watch those sort of things. But you sent it to me, and I figured, I had to give it a listen, and I got about halfway through it, and I can't imagine there being another 20 minutes. It was a very impactful 20 minutes as it was. Um, and just some of the, I would encourage people to look that up and listen to themselves, and listen to that conversation. Not to promote Colin Cowherd or Fox, but really just to like highlight the fact that, like, something you and I have talked about a lot, in our off the record conversations, is that, in the last couple of years, especially, it feels like, uh, people in high positions of power or with lots of responsibility, whether it's shaping public discourse or, just the betterment and safety of people's lives, whatever it may be, they've never been more comfortable saying the quiet part out loud. It was always, corruption's always been a thing for as long as humans have been alive. People have always lied. People lie, cheat, steal, commit crimes, fuck people over, like that. That's been happening for as long as humans have existed, and it will sadly continue to happen. But just because it happens doesn't mean that we can't try to highlight the good of people as well, and to find a way to create a better society. Um, so yeah, calling a spade, and also just, again, like, um so that was a really fascinating thing to watch, even if it was just the first 20 minutes. I thought what really stood out was a lot of what we've talked about on the record and off the record, where, look, similar to what you said, I got nothing against stars. Like, in many ways, we should come on here and talk about them, and celebrate that, because, you know, uh, that we don't want to not do that. But, I can only speak from my own perspective, and I think you kind of hinted to it as well, where, to me, part of the reason why I've always loved sports is because it brings people together, regardless of all these different societal tropes that we may have, and it can be an escape and an outlet from the day to day thing, and unite people together. And then, another part of that is the tacticality of it, and the art form expression of it. Like when you see a really great player do their thing, like at the World Cup, when you see one of these guys just make an incredible run or a beautiful pass, or a mind-boggling save, or whatever it may be, like that's an art form. When you see the tactical adjustments being made by different managers and the different play styles of countries from different parts of the world, whether it's Africa or the Middle East, or, South America, or North America, or Europe, and, the stylistic tactical differences of how each country plays, how in each sport, like you mentioned baseball, like how we talked about it before, like, how the Japanese players are one, maybe, cut from one cloth and are really good in their own right. And then maybe the Dominican players or the Venezuelan players are cut from a different cloth with a different level of, a different flair and a different taste to the same game. It's like food. Some people, like, some of the best meals that have ever come to fruition have been taking what one culture does and then blending it with what in your own culture, and fusion. Um, so I think, as it pertains to that conversation with Fox Sports, with Colin Cowherd and this Mr. Insights guy, only in just watching the first 20 minutes, what I thought was really fascinating was a lot of the things that you and I have always known to be true, but just saying it out loud, like on the record, where it's like this idea that, like, he was talking about countries as brands, and comparing, the ratings of the World Cup via Fox's numbers and what they have available to them, whether it's at home or out of home reach and scope, and comparing it to the NFL, where with Fox or with American sports media, you know, uh, we've talked about it. The NFL gets jerked off on a 365 day a year basis, even though they play the least amount of games in a calendar year. Um, so to hear all of these different things and then to hear them talk about, the best matchups that would be best for them and what those ratings would look like if those matchups were to happen. You
Mm.
know, what best case scenario, we get Argentina and England and the way the bracket's shaping up, they'll meet in the semifinals. And then, so what would be best for us would be that matchup. And then the winner of that against France. And, it's a little bit of the stars, it's a little bit of the brand, not the country, the brand. And we did get really good numbers in an Uzbekistan match, in a Haiti match, and we got X amount of people to watch these matches. And um, looking at people in terms of a demographic, it's just a number and a rating. And oh, we overestimate the number of diehards, and it's like 90% casuals. And we ask people, and they don't know anybody. And that's a lot of times why you and I bitch about the coverage is because you can make a statistic say whatever you want it to say. You can make a poll say whatever you want it to say. You can propagandize anything to convince people that hydration breaks are not about all of a sudden, like you mentioned, all of a sudden, Fox cares about climate change, apparently. Like, what are we doing? And what's fascinating, man, while we're on the subject of that, like, not, let's not beat around the bush here. Let's just call a spade a spade. Like, the same people that will spread propaganda, and it's on the record. Like, I'm not even making this up. Like, I'm not even trying to, it's just like, it's just a fact. Like, the same people that are telling you, like, hey, shut up and dribble, like, keep politics out of sports, like, you know, keep sports pure and separate. And then like with Flo Balogun, this is a guy who the only reason he's able to play for the United States is because he was born in the United States, even though he had the ability to play for other countries. And it's like politically, there's the propaganda that like, oh man, all these immigrants from all these shithole countries, we don't like them, we don't want them, unless they're really good at sports. Like in baseball, we love the Dominicans and the Venezuelans and the Puerto Ricans when it comes to
Cubans.
baseball, and we make billions of dollars. But the everyday people who love this country and they work, they work hard and they raise their children here, and their children love this country and become, you know, uh, outstanding members in their own communities. Like those are the bad, evil people. Um, but it's only but it's convenient when it's like it's a great actor or an actress or a really talented musician or a world-class athlete. But when it's somebody that nobody's ever heard of, it's easy to villainize those people and paint them out as the bad guy and the people that are responsible for all the fucked up things that go on behind the scenes, when in reality the coverage is slanted in a way that's meant to divide people instead of uniting them, because in the end of the day, the only reason why you're able to get away with certain things is because you can distract people. In many ways, it's like with sport, we could talk about these things with FIFA, but, as long as the matches are incredible, uh, it's almost like the price we're willing to pay for corruption in a sense because
Yeah.
of how much the sports mean to us. But it's like you don't want to lose the fight of what it stands for. Like, and you mentioned, look, money makes the world go round. I'm not saying not to make money and not to, but it's like at a certain point, like you mentioned, like the hydration breaks, like just in the early days of the tournament, like we talked about it before the tournament. But in the first match of the entire tournament, when it was Mexico and South Africa, and they went to the hydration break and they went to commercial. It was like, damn, if they're doing that in the first match of the opener, they're going to do that all tournament. Um, and then just even like some of the references to like the first quarter, like getting people comfortable with the fact of like a sport like soccer or football, whatever you want to call it, like having commercials, like basketball, dude. Like, not to get off topic, but like that one of the things that they've been beta testing in the G League for the last couple of years, and then they added it to NBA Summer League this year, is that in order to improve the pace of play of a game, if you get fouled from the 3-point line, instead of take and you miss and you get 3 free throws typically in the G League and now in the Summer League this year, if you get fouled from three and you miss, instead of taking the 3 free throws, you just take 1 free throw. If you make it, you get 3 points. And if you miss it, you get zero. What the hell are we doing, man? Like, instead, like, you want to improve the pace of play, like, get rid of all the goddamn TV timeouts and the unnecessary commercials. Like, nothing kills the flow and the pace of a game more than a commercial break. But it's like we're convincing people to fix things that don't need to be fixed. And then just like, oh, what are you going to do about it? And like there's been all this propaganda about like people hating free throws. And it's to convince people that, like, oh, people don't want to watch free throws. But no, look, if it's a foul, it's a foul. And if you got to make 3 free throws, you got to make 3 free throws. Otherwise, it destroys the whole purpose of the game of basketball. And you want to make it quicker, there are other ways to make it quicker. It's all like look, look with FIFA, dude. Like these guys play. It feels like these guys play year round and they never get a day off. After the World Cup, the World Cup's going to be done in about a week and a half, and within the next couple weeks, it's going to be the club season again. I mean, they get no break. So if you really, it's not about player safety. It's just to sell ads. So it's like, that Fox Sports conversation was really interesting. I would encourage people to listen to it. I even have to listen to the last 20 minutes. Um, and then you mentioned the US and the Flo Balogun as far as on the pitch. You and I kind of talked about it yesterday after the match, a little bit off the record. And part of what we said to each other, what I told you, and you reiterated the same sentiment or similar. Again, I don't want to speak on your own behalf, but I can only speak from my own. So what I told you was, obviously, you said it best. Like, you can't. It's impossible to quantify how much, but you cannot tell me that there wasn't, like, Belgium was not fired up to play that match in a way that they probably wouldn't have been had that red card thing unfolded the way that it did. Had it in many ways, like, look, Flo Balogun's been great. We can argue again, like, whether it was a red card in the first place or not, and then the VAR aspect of it, like, it just blows my mind that, like, we pick and choose when to use VAR. Like, I brought this up to you earlier as well. Like, it blows my mind that if the ball goes out for a corner, we can intervene and quickly turn it into a goal kick. But if it's a goal kick, we can't go back and make it a corner. Like, what are you talking about? What do you mean we can't do that? But you either have the technology or you don't. Like, you know, uh, it's the bending of rules and stuff to where it's like, yeah, it's like in the NFL. I always say, like, who knows what the hell it catches? It just depends, like, who's playing and who catches the ball that doesn't. And it's like the same thing with this. Like, look, if that Messi thing's not a red card, like, I don't know what to tell you, man. But like, at least, like, that's what the technology's for. Go look at it. But then, like the Flo Balogun situation, they go in, they review it. When you slow it down, maybe it makes it look worse than what it probably the intent of it was. You can argue whether it was a yellow card or a red card. I think you said it a while back. Like, it's a shame there's not an orange card, because that's kind of what it was. It was an orange card. It could have been a red. It could have been a yellow. They gave it a red card. But like you said, look, it's not the fact that they gave him a red card or that they didn't. It's that they gave him a red card. They played the rest of the match without it. And then after the match, they said, no, there's no way he's gonna remain suspended. These are the rules. Only for 24 hours before kickoff. You know what? Like, Article 27 of the bylaws or whatever the fuck. All of a sudden he's magically eligible to play in the Cristiano Ronaldo rule, where it's like, yeah, you know what? Suspend that suspension. We want him out there. Two presidents who, buddy, they call each other and say, hey, man, like, this is a great injustice. How would you feel if we got rid of Harry Kane and Lionel Messi? Hint, hint, wink, wink. Like, you got Gianni Infantino talking about how nervous he was for Argentina watching them against Cape Verde. I mean, he must have been shitting his pants watching them against Egypt today. You've got the guy on Fox, Mr. Insight, saying, yeah, we want Argentina and England, and we could get to 50 million viewers, and that would be huge for our ratings. It'd be like an NFC championship game, and that would be great for us. And we love that shit and inject that shit into our veins. And the hydration breaks, like, hey, you know what the fuck are you gonna do about it? Like, same thing with big noon kickoff. What are you gonna do about that either? Suck it up, deal with it. You want to watch this game in prime time too fucking bad. We're putting it at 9 o'clock in the morning Pacific, 12 o'clock Eastern time, and you're just gonna have to fucking deal with it. Like I don't know, man. It's just really fascinating to me how these things work. I think as far as the U.S. match against Belgium, yeah, look, I think it's impossible to quantify how much. You mentioned it from the USA perspective of like what that would have done to their mental psyche. Uh, I look at it from a Belgian perspective of like, dude, there's nothing that galvanizes a group of dudes more, and I'm pretty sure they admitted as much. Yuri Tielemans and whatnot after the match, they're like, yeah, you know what? Like we talked about it, we're aware of it. We wanted to let our play do the talking, and that's what we did. And I think Pochettino's done a great job, and I hope that there's not an overreaction to the defeat, because in many ways I think there were a lot of factors outside of it that influenced the match. Like we'll never know. It's just a hypothetical scenario that we're speculating on. But I almost feel as if they would have just left it alone and let Balogun just be suspended, even though Balogun's been one of, if not their best players. Maybe it would have been a more competitive match because you just gave Belgium all this juice. Number one, you've got this confusion of the mental psyche of the squad. And then, again, I don't want to critique Pochettino too much because he's done an excellent job, but I did feel as if there was a little bit of like a tactical oversight where, what worked against Paraguay, Australia, Bosnia,
Turkey. Eh?
yeah, Turkey, like those are good sides, but what worked against them might not work against Belgium. Like you mentioned Iran, like we've talked a lot about Iran, but let's just talk about it on an on the pitch perspective for a second. Like Iran played Belgium, and we talked about the offsides with the hair of the ass cheeks or whatever. Um, but look, they got a draw in that match. In many ways, I told this to you off the record as well. Like I felt as if when Belgium got sent down to 10 men, it almost worked against Iran in the sense that their game plan was that they were not going to have the ball. And with Iran, with all the sanctions and the lack of, and the travel logistics, like that's all part of it. And part of it also, even going back to the Carlos Queiroz days, like Carlos Queiroz was the only guy willing to take that job for those many years, and I'm forever indebted to him for taking that job, and doing a job that nobody else wanted. And once they mutually parted ways, it was always inevitable that it was going to be, someone from within the country. And look, were they the most tactically brilliant side in the tournament? No. And in many ways, I think that might have been what maybe their floor, they didn't lose, but they obviously not even having Osmoon as well. That's a big part of it. But tactically, like, the success that they had was not due to tactics. It was due to the 11 guys on the pitch and the substitutes and the guys that weren't even playing, but were as equal part of the team. And they all banded together and said, hey, you know what? We're getting fucked here. Like let's come together and let's show these guys how tough we are. That's what led them to the performance that they had. It wasn't tactics. It was like they knew the assignment, they bought in to the game plan, and they knew their limitations, and they said, okay, we're gonna give this thing everything that we've got against Belgium, against Egypt. And again, they didn't win, but they should be proud of their performance and what they did, especially given the circumstances of all these different things. And against Belgium, they were comfortable not having the ball, and they scored. It just got, again, by the fraction of his ass cheeks, he was offsides. But they draw the match 0-0. Same similar story against Egypt. But my point is that the U.S. Like when Belgium played Egypt, when Belgium played Senegal, these were tough matches for Belgium, and a lot of that was because there wasn't a lot of space for the talented players of Belgium to do what they want to do. But against the United States, from the moment that the ball kicked off, I think Belgium were almost, not only were they fired up, but they're like, damn, we weren't expecting to have this much space. I think the US went into it tactically almost thinking like, "Hey, you know what? We are just as good, if not better than these guys." And it backfired. Maybe if they play them another 15 times, it doesn't play out that way, but in that particular rendition, it did. How much of that was because of the off the pitch stuff and how much of it was just maybe just in the day that it happened, we'll never know the full scope of it. But and then obviously the US made some disastrous mistakes as well. But you know, I think credit to Belgium. They and you kind of said it too. Like, I don't actively root against the United States, but I'm also probably not as I love America. I always root for America. I root for the country. But when it comes to, and it's like you mentioned, we had the conversation yesterday. Like when it comes to especially to the World Cup specifically, at least yeah, I root for Iran more than I do the U.S. If they're, I'm an American. I root for the U.S. in other contexts, but in a sporting context, I feel as you mentioned, like I feel like the people of Iran, the people outside of Iran that want to go back there, like they whether everyone agrees on that, even within the community, whether it's in the United States or other countries or in Iran itself, like just like in this country, in the United States, not everybody agrees on everything. Iran's the same thing. Like, you get 50 Persian people and you ask them what they think should happen in Iran, you get 50 different answers. That's just the nature of the beast. But like, my hope would have been that like, in those 90 minutes, they all come together and root for the team. And, so yeah, like I think the way that the team was treated was bullshit. The way that the Balogun red card situation was bullshit. Messi not getting a VAR review, bullshit. Ronaldo getting his thing suspended, bullshit. All these different things I think are bullshit. I think, that's just, and I don't want my opinion to get lost or your opinion to get lost in the fact of the matter. And the fact of the matter is, like in the Balogun situation, there was a phone call. And if you don't believe us, take it from the people themselves who said as much. And they're telling you point blank that there was a phone call. Don't take my word for it, your word for it. Like take the word of the people themselves that are telling you that there was. Um, and so yeah, look, I wasn't totally, yeah. Look, was I rooting for the U.S.? Yeah, it would have been cool to see them win. But I would be lying to you if I said, you know what, I honestly kind of felt like it was poetic justice, and Belgium got the desired outcome that was fair because if the U.S. would have won that match, it would have been a dirty, tainted result, like you mentioned. It would have been, you want to win, but you want to win fairly. It's just like if I was running for political office, which I'm not, but if I was, like I would want to win on my own merit. And if people didn't vote for me to win, I lost. If I was the coach of a basketball team or a baseball team and the team that I'm coaching, we lose, I'd rather we lose and both teams compete and we respect each other and maybe it's not on an even playing field, but it's as close to it as possible. And there's a mutual respect and we respect each other by trying to beat the crap out of each other on the game itself. But then after the game, we could shake hands and say, "Hey, man, good game. That was fun. I enjoyed competing against you." And if we lose, we lose. If we win, we win. But to to dismiss the opposition, I mean, as like some of these other countries, that's like filth and garbage and like the hooligans and what the hell are these guys doing? And they're playing like they're out here like, let's not go too far. Let's not let the pendulum swing too far in either direction. Like, I'm not coming from some moral high horse. Like, I'm a flawed dude with a lot of flawed perspectives who's made a lot of mistakes. I would never claim to be like the morality police and tell people how to think. Like, it's the antithesis of my life's, you know, purpose and being. But let's not lie to people, and that's part of what we want to do here with these conversations is like, let's give people the opportunity to come to their own conclusions, but let's not dumb it down and lie to them either, with like the World Cup coverage. I know it's something that drives probably both of us a little crazy sometimes, even if we try not to let it happen to us sometimes, but sometimes you can't help it because it's like, you know, uh it's easy to say, like, it goes back to that A Vast Wasteland speech from Newton Minow at the FCC, many, many moons ago in 1961. Like, yeah, ratings will tell you one thing, but it's another thing to wonder like what would the ratings would be if you actually pushed the people that you were putting the content on even further. Like you could give them a halftime show and extra commercials like the Super Bowl. We always bitch about the Super Bowl because it's like everything against football. It's just all about the like somehow we found a way to set like convince people to watch commercials and enjoy it. Like that's crazy to me. You know, um, so it's like, I get that not everyone is a diehard like I might be or yourself, and they might not be like, watching all 48 teams and being able to name the players on these different squads. I get that. But to dumb down your coverage and to justify it to the fact that, hey, you know what? Let's not overestimate how many diehards there are out there. Like, don't even look at it like that. I think it's a disservice to the beauty of your sport if you dumb it down because those 90% of the people that you're claiming are just casuals, forget trying to sell them on a product. If you really want them to be, if you really want to sell your product and get people to watch, you get them to watch by not insulting them.
By not patronizing them, yeah.
By challenging them, making them think and using their brains and highlighting like the tacticality of like what teams are doing and not just and not giving biased coverage only towards the ones that you want to win because they sell you more advertising dollars to get more people to watch. Like that is also an insult to the sport. So let's not lose sight of that either. Like people are smarter than we give them credit for, whether they're diehards or not. Don't feed the bullshit. Let them do their thing. And I mean, dude, it's just an insult to the game. Like there's so many, like, you mentioned it to me off the record, like uh where it's like, this notion in some of the Fox broadcasts that you've been watching where it's like, oh, now the tournament's beginning. Like we got rid of DR Congo and Ghana and Uzbekistan and Iran and Iraq and Senegal and we got rid of yeah we lost our precious United States and we're sad about that, but like even John Strong said it himself last night, like, look, for those of you in the, basically tying it back to that Fox interview with Colin Coward, Mr. Insights, it's like, basically to the 90% of you that we claim to be broadcasting this to that don't really care and are just watching this because the US are playing and it's a cultural event or whatever, like, stick with us. It's a beautiful sport. Like, we've still got Lionel Messi and Kylian Mbappe and Harry Kane and Erling Haaland and all these guys. Like, you won't want to miss out. Like, stick with us. And it's almost a shame because it's like, well, damn, like what was the point of all those other matches? Like, let's talk about Argentina and England and Norway and France and all these different, the US and whatnot and Spain. But let's also give some love to Cape Verde and to Egypt and DR Congo and even Mexico, like and like even though they didn't win, they gave it the best that they could. They competed, and that's worth celebrating because that's what sports is supposed to be about. And like I know you and I root for the underdog, and some people don't, and they want the stars, and that's fine. It's a healthy conversation. We want all the different perspectives, but a healthy competition is one in which every team feels that they have a legitimate chance, and that like even if the resources are never going to be exactly the same, and the talent level is never going to be the same, you know. It's one thing when, like, the organization itself is corrupt, but it's another thing when the matches themselves are corrupted, so let's not lose sight of that either.
Yeah, I mean, that's been one of the yeah, I mean, I said for all of FIFA's faults in previous tournaments, it's always been, well, all this stuff is going on off the pitch, but at the very least, the games on the pitch, the games that are happening in between the lines, at least they still have some integrity. At least they have, at least that has not been, you know, um, impacted in any way by FIFA's um, immorality. And we were able to say that up until I think this tournament. Because whether it's the Ronaldo situation, and we're not look, you and me, you and me have no agendas against Ronaldo. Look, there's a lot of people in this country, or just in this world, and just in the world. Football fans are very, um, you know, uh, very passionate, and y- you know, there's a lot of people who will root for Ronaldo's downfall, or Messi's downfall, or Mbappe's downfall, or Jude Bellingham's downfall, or whatever. Neymar's downfall, and you know, at the end of the day, I don't know. I mean, I'll speak for myself. Like with regards to Messi and Ronaldo, just the players themselves. You know, I mean, I've I've watched a lot of games where my team has been involved. Whether it's Mexico, Germany, Bayern, Tottenham. The U.S., Italy. Like all those teams have gone up against Mbappe and Messi and Ronaldo numerous times, both club and country, and because and I can tell you right now, like my teams have had a lot of great success against them, and many and but then they've also have had those three guys have had also had a lot of success against my teams as well. I mean, you play so many games, you're both, you're gonna exchange blows. And you know, I can think of many times where my teams have beaten Messi or Ronaldo, and I can think of many times where Messi and Ronaldo have beaten my team. But having said that, that's a long way of saying I don't. I have I at the ultimately I don't have anything else but respect. I have there's I'm still floored by Messi's brilliance on a daily basis. Um, I'm always amazed at Ronaldo's work ethic and his drive. And Mbappe, I've said this on the record. I've also said this off the record. I have a lot of people who can attest to this, but there is not, I can go on and on about Mbappe, but there is not a single athlete in any sport that makes me clench my non-existent butt cheeks, makes me clutch at just makes me sweat, and makes me just gives me a really uncomfortable feeling in my stomach, more than Kylian Mbappe. There is that guy when if if the ball's going toward him, or if he has the ball at his feet and he's in space, even if he doesn't have any space, um, it's the scariest thing I've ever experienced as someone who, you know, yeah, I love many sports just as you do, Ryan, and like each of my teams, like I said, have gone up against many greats over the years: Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, um, you know, uh, Albert Pujols, Alex Rodriguez, uh, Clayton Kershaw, Cristiano Ronaldo, Leo Messi, Kylian Mbappe, Connor McDavid, um, Alex Ovechkin. All these guys have created, have led me to pull my hair and get just stress the hell out of me. But at the end of the day, like there is not like, there's just something about that kid, man. That just he is a tour de force that I have that yeah. And it's not that he does any different from, I mean, because if Messi beats you, he's gonna do something magical with his feet. He's gonna do some witchcraft with those tiny legs of his. If Ronaldo beats you, it's gonna be because of sheer just uh willpower and determination. And if in both cases, it's like, you know what, when if they score against you, it's like you tip your cap and you say, you know what, you were like, what are you gonna do? But with Mbappe, it's like it's genuinely scary, man. So like all these guys, man, all these guys, we are not and Erling Haaland's another dude. Like we have nothing against Erling Haaland as far as I know. Like we love stars. I said it, how last when I was going on my diatribe. Like I appreciate these guys, even if it annoys the hell out of me when they score against my team. Like I find myself appreciating them because of the moments that they, because of the victories over them feel great and will provide memories for a lifetime, and then the losses against those guys will hurt and make me feel things that I otherwise wouldn't feel. And even, it's like we talked about, like sometimes it's better to feel in a weird way. It's sometimes it's better, especially in the context of sport, um you know which is very different from like the context of just life. But in the context of sport, it's better to feel pain and feel loss than it is to feel nothing. And um so in a weird way, through the wins and the losses and just watching them as neutrals, like there is no anti-star agenda that we have. We appreciate all these guys for their greatness, and we'll talk plenty about them, just as much as we'll talk about the underdogs, just as well. Because so I just have a sneaky suspicion that in a couple weeks time we'll be talking on this recording, and we'll be talking about Kylian Mbappe, winning a second World Cup trophy and France winning another World Cup trophy, and he's gonna break so many records, dude. It's frightening. So, or maybe it'll be Messi, or maybe it'll be, like maybe it'll be Argentina, and you know, regardless, they're gonna get their praise. They're gonna get plenty of celebration, and people on this platform will give them their due, and people on the national media will give them their due, and so will we. But um, you know, we'll also try to amplify not just for the sake of being contrarian, but just because you can't tell the story of sport or the beautiful game without telling the story of the other 10 men on the pitch. And um, that's something that we're gonna strive for and make sure that we fulfill. Um, so you know that's yeah. That's
Let's
how I
do
feel
it.
about it, man. And
Oh,
I know
man.
you feel the same way.
Oh yeah, dude. I think that's the perfect way to put a bow on it and set up future conversations, man. You know, it's something we want to continue to do. We want to give love to all the different perspectives and then the stars, but we also want to give love to to the players that maybe don't get as much love and the teams that don't get as much media coverage. Not because we want to be contrarian, but because that's what the beauty of sports deserve. Like, instead of just like following blind ratings that don't give you the full scope of anything, you know, do the thing and then just do it. Who cares what the ratings are? Just not because we're trying to get ratings or anything. Like, look, if it happens, great. If it doesn't, like, it's just talk about the things we're passionate about. And then the beauty of it is that, all the different people that come on here that, have done so and will continue to do so. And then even those that haven't come on yet that will, like, get all these different perspectives and different levels of different interests and different passions and things that go beyond sports as well. And it just it's something that I really look forward to doing many more times. As lucky as we're able to do so, man. So cheers to it all, brother. I really appreciate you taking the time to make this conversation a reality. And the best part of it is that I know you and I could keep on going for another couple of hours. Um, which is the best part of it because I think we could come in here in a couple of days and take this and add another 5 6 hours worth, and I still wouldn't even probably scratch the surface of what we want to be able to talk about. We just had to start somewhere, and we started today, and we'll pick it back up and add layers to it because what we've always talked about and something we want to hold ourselves accountable to is um, just because we talk about something one time doesn't mean it's the only time we talk about it. And then, a lot of things sometimes in the news cycle they come and go and they get lost in the shuffle. And we want to make sure that um, some things don't get lost in the wind, if you will.
Yeah, for the love of the game.
I love it again, brother. All right, my man. Appreciate you. Until next time. Love you, man.
Love you too, man.